And we are here with game 3. I think you could see the end of it loading. I am delighted to see we have an open game. Let's look at what the steps are for this third game. Open closed, level 4, all decks, max of 176. So we can see both chose the 3674. This also was a card that did very well for Akiyama last game. I think Turdz said he used 4673 in the last set, the Xenogears card, but very similar to 3674. Must use at least 3 cards with no repeated numbers, meaning no double numbers. So Turdz, you can see 3674, 5437, and 5742. It's not that they can't repeat with each other, it's that they can't have like 2 5s on the same card. And Akiyama's first 3 cards are the same, and his 5th card also does not have a repeated number. And those cards all must be different combos. So 3674. So there's a 7643, a 7543, and a 7542 for Turdz. You can see similar things for Akiyama. No rares. Okay. All normal rules in effect. Yeah, looks pretty normal. And Akiyama starts with a weak corner that most of his hand is at least half happy to see. Let's, per usual, check his recaptures. So he can recapture from 2 with a 5 down or a 4 down. That's only 2 numbers. So sometimes there's, stuff there. I don't see a way to take advantage of that. For instance, 5, 7, 4, 2, and 4 sets up to cover a 5 down, but not a 4 down. Okay, what about recaptures from 4? He can only do it 2 ways, 7255 or 7534. I notice that 7255 has a potential problem with 7525 and 7 comboing it. So his only thing that cannot be immediately comboed is a 5 facing to the left. So an interesting idea for Turdz might be something like 5437 and 2, because then 7525 and 5 covers the 7525 covers one of the cards from 7 and the other card from 5. So that might be an idea to attack it immediately that way. Another way to do so might be 2566 and 2, but this is susceptible to combos from 3, so I would be less enthused. It's hard to look for a setup in 5 because a lot of the things that set up in 5 will be sames for 3674, and of course Akiyama has those as well. So it doesn't seem very intuitive to me to play in 5. One thing Turdz might be intending that looks kind of natural with his hand is his 5742 and his 5437 can play a little off each other. So maybe something like 5437 and 9 could be logical, saying I can create a challenge for you that you don't have coverage of, and hopefully I still have sufficient captures of your starter. Though I will notice that both of Turdz's remaining captures in 2 have a 5 to the right, and Akiyama has those covered pretty well with 2547, so you definitely would have to be careful about that. I would also note that every one of Turdz's cards is a corner card. Akiyama is the only one to be running a vertical or horizontal card here in 2547. Now, one of the things that corner cards are not very good at is narrow horizontal or vertical pluses. So for instance, if Turdz plays 5, 4, 3, 7, and 9, and then later plays in 2 and Akiyama combos it, it could be hard for Turdz to have a combo back in 6 because a 1 gap between his up and down power is fairly rare. But actually, he has a few examples of this. 5742 actually does give him the combo back there, and 2566 is a side-to-side 1 gap, and 7525 is a side-to-side 0 gap. So actually, despite the fact that every one of his cards is a corner card, he actually has pretty good coverage in this sense. So what ideas have we had? I've had 5437 and 2. I've had 5437 and 9. Don't feel amazing about either of these ideas. I would note Akiyama's starter helped cover 2566 and 3. He doesn't inherently have coverage of that 6 to the left. So yeah, if we look at Akiyama's hand, it is 7s in 3 directions, but only a 6 in the 4th. So that 2566 might have some sneaky play at some point. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know what I think Turdz should do. It's one of those games where the solver will say everything works, but it feels a lot tenser to play. Another idea might be no, I don't like that idea. Scratch that. I have no other ideas. Hmm. Yeah, no, I'm drawn again to Akiyama's recaptures being limited. I just like attacking starters these days, and I think we've seen Akiyama do it in a bunch of games, and we've seen a bunch of players do it. Um, Very much a modern development. I was having a conversation with an old school player and just mentioning that one of the changes in play, I think, is there's a lot more playing next to or capturing corner starters than there used to be. And they said, yeah, that they found that quite weird. Um, but it's just harder to control starters than sometimes feels like it should be. If Turdz is taking this long, I'm a little worried for him. I think this is a kind of easy position to not find a clear goal in. And if you don't find a clear goal, and you do something kind of vague that seems all right, I think the position could get dangerous fast. All right, he has picked up 5437. Now, I considered 5437 in both 2 and 9. Those were basically the only moves I considered. So this is the card I guess I want to see him pick up. And he does go in 9. Now, I thought the biggest problem here might be that Akiyama can go in 4, because both your captures in 2 are covered. But how well covered are they? 2547 can be comboed back in 6. So if like Akiyama goes 4 and you have to take in 2 with 2566 or 7525 and you get comboed by 2547, as long as you're not comboed back at the end of the chain by 5742 after you play 5742 and 6, you should be good. So there is hope there. And you could also meet 2 by just going in 6 immediately, which is something I hate to do, but Turdz likes. And probably makes sense here. And Turdz has done well with those moves. So I think this is probably fine. If you're Akiyama, there's the moves that say, I want to address my problem. And my problem is I don't have 8. Right? Turdz's move has created more challenge for Akiyama than Akiyama's move did for Turdz. So Akiyama's move, the 4 and the 3 are just genuinely not that easy for Turdz's hand to take. They're not easy for either hand to take. But this clearly poses more challenge. So the first thought, or one thought, is I want to get rid of the squares that I don't have play in. So moves that might come to mind are something like 7, 5, 3, 4, and 7, saying I want to have play in 8, which I don't currently have, or something in 5, like 7, 2, 5, 5, and 5. I'm not saying this move is good. I'm just saying it fits the ethos here of I want to get play in 8. So if you want to get play in 8, you look at 5 and 7. If you want to get rid of 8, you either play 8 immediately, which doesn't look very appealing, or you play 6, forcing your opponent to play 8 and trying to have a good follow-up. And in fact, we see that. We see one of these moves. Now, we see the one I immediately ruled out, so sure, I look silly. But this is one of those, I'm going to get rid of these squares. And I did notice a while ago when I was trying to categorize style of the top players, that Akiyama really likes, in these opposite corner positions, going next to the opponent's card. I also remember that opposite corner positions tended to be the ones where Akiyama had the most trouble, that he got some of his worst results. Obviously, he gets very good results in general, but he got some of his worst results from these. So maybe something to keep an eye out for. Now, does Turdz have a nice way to block 6? Doesn't look so great. So maybe this has some nice sting to it. I'm gonna predict without thinking much that we see 5, 7, 2, 4, and 6, but we'll actually think about it shortly. But this is an interesting move, so I wanted to go through the different thinking. There's I want to have 8. If you want to have 8, you go in 5 or 7. There's I don't want 8 to be a square anymore. If you don't want 8 to be a square anymore, you either go in 8, that guarantees it, or you sort of try to force it to happen by going in 6 and taking 8 so that they have to go back in 8. If you go in 6 not taking 8, they have no reason to go in 8 themselves because you have no threat in 8. And then there's moves that say, okay, you played your card, but I can create problems for you with my card. You can go in 2 or 4, saying you don't have the other of 2 or 4. I have play against it, and I'm happy there. And I really don't think you go 3 very much here. Yeah, 3 seems the square that you never really play. But this is to say, in opposite corners, almost every square, and maybe every square, is pretty plausible. Like, I don't think you ever go 3, but I guarantee you the solver will point out a tie in 3. Because I suspect the solver, I don't guarantee, but I suspect the solver will find at least one tie in every square. I don't think this was that dangerous a position for Akiyama. Turdz has to be careful here, I think. I think there's you can imagine a lot of positions like say 5-7-4-2 and 6, where Akiyama maybe just goes something like 7-2-5-5 and 5. I don't think this works. I think this doesn't line up well. But just his 2 cards that like sweep a decent amount of the remaining territory and make it difficult to play. You might think 3-6-7-4 doesn't sweep that well there. Okay. But if it lands in 4, it's going to take anything in 7. And if it lands in 7, it actually takes most things in 4. I guess not either 2-5-6-6 or 5-7-4-2, but I'm assuming 5-7-4-2 is out of the hand. But it has a plus against 3-6-7-4, and it overpowers 7-5-2-5. So it's actually not a bad sweeper over on the left if 5-7-4-2 is out of Turdz's hand, or 2-5-6-6 is. Because as soon as one of those is out of his hand, he only has one card that's not swept by it. I don't know. I would expect 5-7-4-2 and 6. I'm going to start inputting this game in the database and maybe getting solver open. But to me, my thought this game is this seems like a little bit of an anxious game. And I don't mean that in like a remotely critical way. I just mean like I would feel anxious while playing this game with either color because I don't feel anything's clicking and I'm not finding a coherent plan. So for both sides, I would be kind of trying to get this game over with and moving on to the next one. Because like if I could play in 7 with Turdz with like 7-5-2-5 and that was safe, I'd be delighted. But there's nothing clean like that. Maybe there's something with like 5-7-4-2 and 4 where you can just land 2-5-6-6 and 5 and keep it clean. But I don't really like that idea very much. Maybe it's fine, but like, yeah, I don't really think there's a clear move on turn 4 here that clarifies the position, which means even if there's lots of different ties, whichever tie you find, you really have to have checked it the whole way because the ties and the losses are likely to look kind of similar. And so if you just play a move that looks plausible here, you're maybe like 60-40 to get the tie or whatever, but I think some of the plausible moves are probably not going to work and some are, and it's hard to do the extensive calculation. So I guess what I'm saying is I think this type of position is just like Turdz should be fine. If Turdz finds a good move, he's fine, and probably Akiyama has to find a good move in reply. But I also think it's really easy to just get lost here. Okay, well this is despicable. It has become a meme in some chats I'm in that I hate this setup where you have these the 2 corners and the 2 sides next to allowing a free S or Z, in this case Z. I think I called an S a Z last game, but this one's actually a Z. I know which way the letters face. But suffice it to say, I am always uncomfortable with this. Now here, 5-7-4-2 may kind of be a bomb. It covers 2-5-4-7 and 3, and it creates an unshared threat in 5 of a plus. So maybe it has really good uses. Also, Akiyama's only capture from 6 is 3-6-7-4, and 5-7-4-2 now has that covered both ways, both in 5 and in 3. So you can see this is really about setting up the 5-7-4-2, and the other cards hopefully can work for themselves. And this is probably good, but I hate it. I don't like it at all. I'm so worried that the setups will go against me. So 2-5-4-7 has a threat in 3. If you could create a threat somewhere else with it, that would be pretty devastating. But you can't really. You don't have a good setup in 4 for it. You don't have a good setup in 6 for it. 7255 kind of sets it up because it gives it a plus in 6, but because it flips 2, it gives up its threat in 3. So you sort of, it's a wash, I guess. And probably worse than a wash because 7525 then is safety in 6. So I suspect this is good enough, but I don't have to like it. That's really the motto of a lot of triple triad. Good move, I don't like it. I'm gonna start inputting this game because I may have run out of thoughts. We'll see how Akiyama wants to attack this. My guess is this is good enough to hold, but that Akiyama has a whole bunch of moves to check that might be good. And I'll let him do that work, and I will space out and answer some prior questions in the game rather than the current ones, because I do not want to spoil what's happening. It is perfectly possible we're still going to have a decisive result in this one. I am not spacing out because I don't think the game is still tense and important, but precisely because I think it is tense and confusing, I'm being lazy. That's my conclusion here. And I just think we can come back a turn from now and things will be all much clearer, and I'll be happy with that. So I liked 5, 4, 3, 7, and 2, which ties. 5, 4, 3, 7, and 9 also ties. Now, we didn't think there was a chance Akiyama could be winning there, so that's not a spoiler. I'm going to try not to spoil anything of real importance. Akiyama plays 7, 5, 3, 4, and 8. Yeah. So it is saying most moves, or a fair number of moves tie, but I think the position is nonetheless quite complicated after 8, and that, like, technically a bunch of moves tie does not mean... And one of them does tie in 3, like I guessed. There was one tie in 3. And then the question is, how's Turdz move? And I don't know, because I won't check yet. On the other hand, we should probably be trying to find something for Akiyama, because if he has lots of moves, like, we should be able to find one of them. 7 is always hard, just because 4 hits you pretty badly. But it is possible. I would be checking... So the reason Turdz' move might be good here is if this is actually, like, not a position where Akiyama has a clear move, he could have good moves in any square. Like 3, 6, 7, 4, and 3 could be the best move, but 7, 2, 5, 5, and 4 could be the best move. It could be that you need to play 7, 2, 5, 5, and 7, sack it to 3, 6, 7, 4, and 4, have 2, 5, 4, 7 land in 5, and then have 3, 6, 7, 4 as your sweeper. I don't think that works, but I'm just saying it's possible. It's possible you need to set up the Z in 5, and you got to be really careful when you go into the Z, especially if you allow any combo potential. And every move in 5... Well, the most plausible move in 5 is probably 7, 2, 5, 5, but that gives up combo in 4, gives up safety in 6. So maybe this is just really, like, Akiyama has to be careful, and I should be saying what I think a playable move for him is. And that's not obvious. Because I don't really like the look of 7, 2, 5, 5, and 7. I don't like the look of 3, 6, 7, 4, and 3. I think it gives up a lot of ground. It's like if 3, 6, 7, 4, and 3 say like 7, 2, 5, and 6. Not sure that's exactly right, but it looks pretty uncomfortable. You just are running out of things to take. You're down 6-4. Maybe 2, 5, 4, 7, and 5 makes sense. I've been trying to hold on to that card because it has play in 3. Okay, we do see that move. I've been trying to hold on to that card because it has play in 3, but it's also our worst sweeper. So if we're going to set up a formation and have sweepers around it, this seems logical. Yeah, Oh, maybe this was really nice by Turdz. It also sets up this same in 6, which is useful. Yeah, so if Turdz plays 7-5-2-5 and 6, you can play 7-2-5-5 and 3. That makes it 5-5. And Turdz has to go 5-7-4-2 and 4, and that's just a tie. So is this just a tie? If this is, nicely done by Akiyama, because this was actually pretty dangerous, despite my dislike of such moves in 2. Alright, I want to go back. How many ties were there after this move in 2? 2 ties. And if we compare to something like 5-7-4-2 and 6, which was my prediction, that gives 5 ties. So, I'm wrong, as is so often the case. I'm going to quickly just spam out every move without thinking and see if there's anything that gave fewer ties than what Turdz played. Because again, I think Turdz has been playing at just a really superb level, just so often making moves where there's nothing better. Not just this isn't losing or something like that, or there's no move clearly better, but there's no move that has a case to be better. And not obvious moves. At least to me. Yeah, I think Turdz has had an awesome tournament. Okay, I have found a move just by randomly clicking squares. I found 2 moves that give fewer ties. So my idea of 5-7-4-2 and 6 gave 5 ties, but actually 3-6-7-4 and 6 only gives 1 tie. But it's an obvious move. It's a 7 facing out in 7. Okay, but 7-5-2-5 and 6 also only gives 1 tie. And that move I don't think is so obvious. So maybe 7-2-5 and 6 maybe was a better try than this. If this isn't winning, I haven't actually checked if Akiyama found a tie, and we will leave that open. We will just know he only had 2 ties. But I think this looks like one of them. I just don't want to spoil any of us. Akiyama played 2, 5, 4, 7, and 5, putting that in the database. I don't see how Turdz is going to win now. I guess is my way of saying I think this looks like a tie. I think the line we're going to see is 7-5-2-5 and 6, 7-2-5-5 and 3, 5-7-4-2 and 4. The 2-5-4-7 having that 7 facing out, so important. 3-6-7-4 and 7. That is my official prediction for this endgame. Now, I'm likely to be wrong because Turdz has picked up 3-6-7-4, which is not one of the cards I said. Alright, I'm going to see what the actual evaluation of this position after 2-5-4-7 is. I can only restrain myself so long. This was one of the 2 ties. What was the other tie? The other tie was 3-6-7-4 and 7. See, that's a very hard move to find. Because there's just, not because it's like maybe you look at the move and you start calculating it and it works, but there's so many moves you check first. And I don't think it's super obvious that it works. Okay, so I think Akiyama found the much more human tie, which is good. We love to see it. Go humans. Turdz plays 3-6-7-4 and 6, which is not a move I considered, but basically ties the same way. Yeah, except did my move tie? I should make sure my move tied. Alright, my move also tied. This gives a few more options for Akiyama to attack, but none of them work, so it doesn't actually mean anything. Not an important difference. 3-6-7-4-6, 3-6-7-4-3, and we will now see 7-5-2-5-7, and we do, and 7-2-5-5-4. Good game, complex game, difficult game. As I said, I would have been very uncomfortable on both sides of this. Akiyama having to find a precise move 5, Turdz finding a precise move 4 maybe wasn't necessary, but I do think that kind of position, it's way easier to go wrong than you'd think. Even if the solver says lots of moves tie, don't trust it. It's a jerk. Yeah. All right, so we're all tied up, and we've had 3 games, and we've had 3 different results. We've had a win for Turdz in the open, a win for Akiyama in the closed, and here a combative tie. Draw, whatever you want to call it. All right, next video. I think they might be stopping now, so perhaps next video will be another day. But I'm gonna check that, but I will say goodbye to you.